Browns back at practice here. They will fly to London on Wednesday night. As you can see, it's just Ashley and I for this one. Mary Kay is in London already. That direction? I don't know. Wherever, somewhere off that way in the distance.
That way?
Somewhere. Yeah, I don't know. She's in London right now. We're going to talk to her later in the Orange and Brown Talk podcast. But of course, the big news, Ashley, is Dillon Gabriel will make his first start in place of Joe Flacco. We talked to Kevin Stefanski today about the move, and look, it just felt like he felt like it was time.
Yeah, and I think what was interesting was Kevin Stefanski reiterated on Wednesday that, look, this isn't about one person, but I think the consensus kind of across the board, we had a chance to talk to a handful of players, including Jerry Jeudy, who the Browns obviously want to get going. Everyone just kind of seems to be on board with this idea of, well, something has to change, and a quarterback change just seems to make the most sense. And I think even though Kevin wouldn't say it directly, I still think those turnovers have been huge, and you have to play clean football if you're this team right now.
Yeah, we've talked about it before, how Kevin just doesn't like turnovers, and we knew this was always something that you might have to deal with Joe Flacco. He's going to turn the ball over, can't move a lot, but at least he gives you something explosive, or at least we thought, and I think that's the other part of this, is you weren't really getting the good of Joe Flacco that came with sometimes having to deal with the bad of Joe Flacco.
Yeah, you really didn't, and we talked about that on the podcast a lot recently too. This idea of it was almost a dialed back Joe Flacco or a toned down Joe Flacco, but once you tone down Joe Flacco's gunslinger mentality, it sort of becomes like what's actually left at that point because we watched it. Obviously, Joe is not mobile. He certainly, I think, lost a step from the last time he was here in 2023. And with Dillon Gabriel, while people always talk about his processing, that mobility he's going to bring, I think, is also going to be key and had an impact in this change, too.
Now, one thing about Dillon, you mentioned that process driven, how process driven he is. He always talks about it. He sounds so much like Kevin Stefanski when he talks. And listening to him today, he told us somebody sent him a text of a firehouse, and he explained it as the garage doors are always open. It's always ready to go when there's an emergency to get in there. And that's sort of how he's approached this. So, if nothing else with Dillon Gabriel, we know he's going to be ready for this moment.
Yeah, and again, this is a guy who started, 63 games in college. He has a lot of experience at that level, so it kind of makes sense that he would stay ready. And look, he had gotten a chance in practices recently, even when he was the backup, to get some reps with the ones. And I also think, look, when you have a rookie quarterback, it is their first time doing a lot of this, and they do step into that backup role. We've talked about that being a job in and of itself, and I do think a lot of times guys start to grasp things that maybe they don't even fully realize until they're out there in a real game. So, really curious to hear from him after Sunday about that sort of stuff, too.
Now, spend a little more time on Joe Flacco, of course, because he spoke today as well. It was short. It was sort of what you'd expect. Obviously, he seemed disappointed that he will not continue as the starter, but also as you'd expect, Joe is a pro. He's going to handle this like a pro, and he's going to give this team what they need now as the backup quarterback because it is him and not Shedeur Sanders as the backup.
Exactly, and everyone kept stressing that Joe is obviously still an important part of this football team. Kevin Stefanski today reiterated like Joe was voted a captain for a reason, right? And I do think you sense that disappointment from him today. I thought you could sense it on Sunday as well in Detroit, but that's to be expected. He's a competitor, and I think he's going to do the job that the Browns need him to do at this moment. But Joe Flacco also knows better than anyone. Things can change on a dime in this league. Weird things happen. Weird things have happened to him here in Cleveland before. So he's going to still stay ready in case they would need to go back to him for whatever reason.
Now, the Browns are pretty healthy as they get on this plane to London tonight. The only guy who did not practice today was Myles Garrett with an ankle injury. But Ashley, we did see Myles Garrett in the locker room. There was no indication that it was anything serious, anything to worry about. But that's really the only injury we're monitoring right now as this team heads over the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah, we did see Myles very briefly in that locker room before practice. He was walking around. He didn't have either ankle wrapped or anything like that. Kevin Stefanski earlier in the day classified him as day to day. He said he did get hurt during the game on Sunday against the Lions. He also really quickly said Jack Conklin would be day to day for this week as well. And I know people are obviously keeping an eye on that tackle situation and what's going to happen there on Sunday.
Yeah, and he also didn't give any indication as to whether Cam Robinson would be ready to go this week or not. But Cam was here We got to see him in his uniform for the first time, all of that. So just monitoring that tackle situation as we go along. Okay, we will have every coverage of everything that happened here in Berea and whatever's happening over in London as well, all at cleveland.com/Browns.